I'd been driving for nearly 6 hours when my phone finally died. The sun was dipping below the pine-clad ridge, and the only signs of civilization were the occasional power pole and long stretches of asphalt that seemed to lead nowhere. I'd taken a wrong turn off Highway 17, chasing a shortcut to my friend's cabin, an off-grid getaway he'd promised would clear my head. Now, with miles of forest on either side and no cell service in sight, I realized shortcut might be the wrong word. I pulled over at the only break in the trees, a gravel turnout marked by a rusted sign reading Lakeview Trail, 2 miles. The map on my dashboard said the cabin lay another mile down that trail. Tossing my dead phone into the passenger seat, I grabbed my duffel and flashlight and set off along the narrow path, boots crunching over pine needles. The forest closed in quickly, the overhead canopy swallowing the last slivers of light. My breath fogged in the cool air, every twig snap and distant owl call sudden and sharp. After 20 minutes, my legs burned, and I wondered if I'd lost the trail altogether. Then I saw it, a weathered post with a faded arrow pointing deeper into the woods, and beneath it the words, "Cabin, 1 mile." Relief washed over me until I noticed the ground around the post was trampled, as though something large had passed through recently. My pulse quickened. I told myself it was just a deer or a bear. I lifted my flashlight and continued. The path narrowed. Gnarled roots snaked across my boots, and the trees grew so close I could almost touch both sides. I thought I heard footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate, so I stopped and whirled around. Nothing but dark trunks and your reflection in the flashlight beam. I swallowed and kept walking. At last, I broke through a tangle of alder and stepped into a small clearing. The cabin sat before me, boarded up and silent, its windows like empty eye sockets. Paint peeled from the walls, and a thin plume of smoke curled up from a stone chimney. I hesitated at the door. Why was the fire burning if no one was home? Then lifted my knuckles and rapped 3 times. No answer. I turned the handle. The door swung open on creaking hinges. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of pine tar. A single lantern glowed on a rough-hewn table. I set down my bag and swallowed hard. My friend should have been here 20 minutes ago. The silence pressed in. Outside, the trees sighed. I flicked off the lantern and switched on my flashlight. The cabin's walls were lined with shelves of dusty canned goods and half-empty sacks of flour. A cot in the corner looked recently slept in. I checked my watch, pitch black out, and still no sign of him. That's when I heard the tap, tap, tap on the window behind me. My heart leaped. I spun around to see a thin handprint smudged on the glass. Long fingers splayed wide. I yanked the door shut and locked it, fumbling for my phone even though it was dead. A low groan echoed through the cabin. I flicked my flashlight toward the wall, and for a split second I saw a pale face pressed against the window. Sunken eyes, lips pulled back in a silent scream. Then it vanished into the gathering dark. I backed away, tripping over my duffel, and raced for the door. I flung it open and ran without looking back, branches whipping my face, flashlight bobbing wildly. The trail seemed to stretch on forever. I heard that groan again, following me, and the soft brush of feet behind me. Finally, after what felt like hours, I burst onto the highway just as my headlights came into view. I jumped into my car and locked the doors, panting. The cabin lay hidden in the trees behind me, windows dark and silent. I drove away without a backward glance, the road unspooling into the black night. In the safety of streetlights and pavement, I dared to check my phone, still dead, but plugged into the charger now. That's when I noticed a single notification, an image file named Welcome. My hand shook as I opened it. The photo showed the cabin's window, and smeared across it was that same handprint, fresh, damp, and perfectly clear. I've never gone back to the woods. I hadn't meant to end up stranded. My car's gas gauge had hovered on E for weeks before I finally decided to fill up. But the station at the junction turned out to be closed. Permanently, I'd learn later. And my tank gave out on a stretch of blacktop that led into nothing but miles of dense pine forest. I tried to restart the engine. Clicking, sputtering, dead. Evening shadows lengthened between the trees. No houses, no cell signal. My only company was the sound of wind and needles and the distant cry of a hawk. I grabbed my duffel, a flashlight, and shrugged on my jacket. By heading deeper into the woods, I'd at least find a vantage point. An hour of trudging uphill brought me to a crumbling service road, half grown with brush, leading to a squat concrete building. A faded sign read, Cedar Creek Pump Station, property of County Water Authority. The metal door hung open on rusty hinges. Inside, the air was stale and cool. No electricity, just the hushed drip of water somewhere beyond. I shined my light down a narrow corridor and saw a lockbox smashed open on the floor, its keys missing. My stomach twisted. Whoever had been here didn't want company. I turned to leave, but a pair of heavy boots soaked in mud lay abandoned near the entrance. I froze, heart pounding, as the sound of something scraping against metal echoed behind me. I turned back toward the corridor. In the beam of my flashlight, the far wall's paint peeled away to reveal a series of hand-scrawled numbers and dates, the last one just yesterday. Beneath them were initials, MR. A distant roar, like a generator, rumbled through the station. I jerked my head to the doorway. A faint orange glow pulsed beyond the threshold. I stepped out and saw it, an old service truck idling, its headlights off, engine growling. The driver's door opened on its own. My breath caught. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. A shape emerged from the cab, tall, hunched, wearing a rain-streaked poncho, and a welding mask flipped up to reveal only shadow beneath. In one gloved hand, it held a heavy wrench. I stumbled backward and dropped my duffel. The figure advanced, wrench raised, boots thudding against gravel. I scrambled to my feet and ran without looking back, crashing through undergrowth until the brush tore at my jacket and my flashlight flickered dead. The orange glow receded behind me. By the time I burst into the highway, night had fallen completely. I flagged down a passing semi, hands shaking as I pointed back toward the trees. The driver's eyes went wide and he slammed his door, flooring the accelerator until the truck leapt forward and swallowed me in its headlights. When I dared to glance back, the forest stood silent under the moon, not a light in the darkness, only the faint echo of gravel bouncing off the road and the memory of a wrench's metal ring. I never learned who or what haunted that pump station. All I know is that in the middle of nowhere, help can be the most dangerous thing you find. I never should have taken that stretch of back roads, but when your GPS dies in the sun setting, you follow the only line on the map. I'd been driving all day, chasing my own demons after a rough breakup, convinced that a night under the stars would reset my head. By the time I crested the ridge, the sky had bruised to deep purple, and below me lay a narrow ribbon of asphalt flanked by endless pines. No signs, no cell signal, just the echo of my exhaust and the scrape of wind in the needles. I leaned on the horn. Nothing. No junctions, no houses, just forest melting into darkness. My tank read 1/4 gallon. I pulled off at a gravel turnout and tried the door handle. It creaked open. Just enough room to squeeze past the passenger side into the underbrush. I grabbed my gear and flashlight, decided I'd follow the road on foot until I found help. The trees arched overhead, branches clawing at the moonlight. Every rustle made me jump. Every distant crack felt like a footstep. 20 minutes in, I found it. An old service gate across the road. Barbed wire sagging. A faded sign warned, "Private property, no trespassing." Beyond it, I heard the drip of water. some hidden creek or pond. Curiosity outweighed caution. I crawled under the wire and pressed on, flashlight beam dancing across mossy stones. Soon the forest floor gave way to concrete slabs, remains of an abandoned dam or waterworks. Rusted pipes arced overhead, and water pooled in shallow troughs. In the hulking shadows stood a squat brick building, its windows boarded, its front door ajar. Inside, a single lantern burned on a steel table, its flame guttering in a draft. The air smelled of mildew and oil. A handwritten note lay beside the lantern. "They'll be back when the lantern dies." My throat went dry. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut. I wrenched at the handle. Locked. The lantern sputtered. In the hush, I heard soft shuffling behind me. I swung the flashlight around. Half hidden by a ruined boiler stood a figure, motionless, face obscured by an oily rag. I dropped to one knee. My light swung up to reveal its eyes, pale, unblinking. I bolted for the door. The figure didn't pursue, just watched as I fumbled the lock and fled into the night. Branches whipped my face as I ran back down the road, every snap behind me sending adrenaline surging through my veins. The lantern's glow vanished behind me, swallowed by the building's broken windows. My car's headlights finally appeared around the bend. Thank God. I threw open the door and dove inside, locking it with shaking hands. When I dared look back, the concrete ruins were gone, only pines and moonlight. In my rearview mirror, though, I swear I saw two pale eyes watching from the darkness, waiting for that lantern to die.